Now, they had a tour going out on Christmas Day, but they said all the shops in Freeport were closed, so I couldn't see the benefit of that. So we're going Friday. Request the high school to send your transcript to a certain school, which of course you have to do. That school's got to get your transcript. The school will put your SAT score on your transcript, or with it. And I went to them and I said,
okay, who are you and how are you related, you know?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Lorreta Weiss and Diane's mother, Rose, and my mother, Lillian, grew up together and knew each other from the time when they were little girls, and that's how we've met. And I don't remember Diane as a little girl. I remember her more as a, you know, older elementary school age child, and especially her teenage years I remember more. And I remember when she lived in Flushing and would come pick me up in her car and we'd go places and do things together. I remember all of us getting together, her mother and my mother and the two of us and her brother Neil, and just keeping in touch that way.
Is there any specific little tour that you made with Diane in the car that was memorable? Or
No,
you don't?
Not really. I mean, it's just local driving.
Yeah.
But I remember I never had a car, I never drove, and she had a big Rambler that we drove around in.
Yeah. But you kept in touch all these years.
Yeah.
It's been how many years?
35.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
And now you have a family?
Yeah, I have two grown sons, 19 and 20.
where he is now.
Now we see each other in Florida once a year.
Exactly.
It's a valid retrospective. I always considered Mr. Pivnik to be a frustrated Marine drill sergeant.
Gerald Jewell still there?
Yeah, Ira mentioned him, but the very first day of gym class with Mr. Pivnik, he got the class together and he announced as sternly as he could. He looked like Woody Allen, but he said, "While you're in my class, your souls are mine." He was a character. And Mr. Jewell we call Dinosaur Brain. Yes. He was just a hulking monster. He was a gym teacher who was out to get everybody else. If a group of kids did something he didn't like, he'd have us all run around the track. I think we were talking about this. And most of the class was playing football or whatever, and the ones who were being punished would run around the track. And every so often he would start to turn away from the football group to look at the track to see if we were still running like we were supposed to. And it took so long for the message to get from his brain to his neck so that he would completely turn around, that the guys who were running around the track would say, "We still got a few more seconds, let's relax. Well, he's about halfway turned. I guess we can start speeding up now." oh, okay, let's run. And we'd run for a few seconds, and that would satisfy him. He'd turn away, we'd slow down again. He never did figure out why we were always running at full speed every time he looked at us for a 45-minute period.
Unbelievable. Then
Now,
Mr.
you got to promise he's not going to see this tape.
No, he's not going to see this tape.
Not if I want to live.
And we had a famous Mr. Fisher. We had Mr. Fisher in common. That has to go back to 8th grade, right? He was like a calculus teacher.
I think algebra.
Algebra.
Probably, if it was first year algebra, that would be 9th grade.
Yeah, I didn't have him in 9th grade. I know who I had in 9th grade, wasn't him?
I remember that we might have had him for 2 different classes. The last class, he started teaching algebra, and then in the middle of the term, he decided he wanted to be a librarian. He went to work in the library, and he was replaced by, what was her name? Mrs. something.
No. I have no idea.
I'd know the name if I heard it.
Don't know.
He was a character.
He was a character. He looked like Oliver Hardy.
Fatso, huh?
Yeah.
Kind of
But he's a nice
sloppy
guy.
type person. Yeah, nice guy.
Yeah.
Reasonable teacher, I think.
A very good teacher, yeah. My recollection, yeah. But the 2 best teachers we had were in physics and chemistry.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when you called me after decades of non-communication, and you told me you were thinking about somebody from the old days, the first thing I said was Monroe Fremd. For some reason,
Was he a
popped into my
physics
head.
teacher?
That was our
Physics teacher.
Right. So he must have made some impression. What? I didn't hear you.
Principal of Siegler Elementary School.
He's very lively. He still has his
All his
wits.
marbles, huh?
But I told you that he wore a toupee. You couldn't believe that?
Why? He had a big head of hair?
He was bald when we knew him.
Yeah, yeah. But he's very vain. He's vain. So. And
And
Mr.
you didn't have a Mr. Cuff for science. did
No.
you? That must have been back at Wisdom Lane School.
Yeah, no.
Because I remember,
You liked him.
yeah, he was a good guy. He might be the one who had the most direct effect on having me go for a ham radio license. He was very interested in pushing kids into scientific hobbies. But I remember one day he came into class and said, I have a new scientific wonder to explain to the class. And what it was his new hearing aid. He knew that if he didn't do something like this, all the kids would razz him about it. So he turned it into a science project. And he showed us how the hearing aid worked, and through the miracle of modern electronics, he could put 4 of these vacuum tubes into a tiny little spot.
How about the recollection of early television, like Mr. Wizard?
Mr. Wizard. Well, Mr. Wizard is probably still about my favorite TV program.
He came back, by the way.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's been on Nickelodeon.
Right.
I don't think they're doing any first-run shows
Mrs.
now.
Markowitz, please contact the hotel operator. Mrs.
The
Markowitz,
sad
please
thing is
contact the
that
hotel
in the old
operator.
days, the original Mr. Wizard shows were a half hour, solidly devoted to one topic, and they got into real depth. The new Mr. Wizard series has these little sound bites.
Yeah.
If it goes 2 minutes, it's a long segment.
Yeah, it's a new kid every 10 seconds.
Right.
And
It shows that they're recognizing the lack of attention span on the new generation.
Well, take it
Yes.
after the president.
So they can't get into any depth on anything. It has to be a superficial presentation. And it's still interesting, but it would be more interesting if they really went into depth.
yeah.
Maybe 10 years ago or so, a little less, I was in New York on a business conference and had a couple of days to spare after the conference. So I went to the Museum of Broadcasting, and the one program I checked out was one of the original Mr. Wizards. That was my recollection of what TV should have been. What I did not remember until I saw that tape was that Mr.
Mr. or
Wizard
Mrs.
did
Markowitz, please
commercials in the
contact the
middle of the
hotel
program.
operator.
I don't remember that, no.
It was a commercial for something scientific,
Yeah.
like a build-it-yourself radio kit or
I
something.
don't remember that.
But it was an integral part of the program.
Didn't remember that at all. It
Well,
was-
they only had one Mr. Wizard program, so if you check it out, you'll probably see the same.
And what other television programs have influenced your
You
life?
should mention that. Obviously, you're thinking of Zachary.
And one other one.
Soupy Sales.
Yes, okay. There you go.
When Ira called me a couple of weeks ago, I asked him if he could prove he was who he said he was, and his response was Soupy Sales.
We had him down here at Century Village. And he was very poor on the stage. He
Yeah?
wasn't funny at all.
He must have come down another time then, because while I was still in New York and I came down on vacation,
That time,
he was performing.
Yeah.
And I thought he was funny at the time.
They come down every 3-4 years. They rotate this.
Yeah.
I even remember one of the jokes he did then.
Or with the teeth? Be true to your teeth and they'll be true to you or something. They won't be false to you. That was the line.
Is that the one you remember?
No, this one was, why do they spell, I hope this is okay for the kids. Why do they spell sex S-E-X? Because nobody knows how to spell yeah.
Did you know that Soupy Sales was one of the first announcers on the first nationally televised Little League World Series game? Talking about trivia nonsense. He happened to be around, and he was an announcer. Can you imagine him as being an announcer?
I still see him from time to time being interviewed on his career. He's always talking about the thing that got him kicked off the air.
Yeah, send in the dollars.
Right. Hey kids, you know those funny little green pieces of paper your father has in his wallet? Well, send them, put them in an envelope and address it to Soupy Sales, WNBC.
And that got him kicked off the air?
Got him kicked off the air until, well, the next day, or a few days after that, he says he was called into his boss's office and berated for having pulled a stunt. He says, what's the big deal with the joke? Everybody knows it was a joke. And his boss said, no, people are sending in money. He says, well, what's the big deal about that? So they send in $5-10, donate it to charity. He says, no, they sent in $50,000. Later on, he admitted it was monopoly money.
Somebody asked the waiter here for a bow tie, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. The guy took off his bow tie, put it on the plate, and saved it to it here.
Filling in the time between Soupy Sales and now, which is about a year or two probably.
Well, let's see.
After Columbia, what'd you do with the rest of your life?
Well, for a while I was working for Columbia as a systems programmer.
They had a 158 and what else?
Not at Columbia. There was a 158 at the place I worked at afterwards, but Columbia had a 360 Model 91.
Ah, yeah, that's special.
Right, there were only about 5 of those in existence, and they had a 360 Model 75. At the time, those were the fastest machines in the world, just about.
Yeah.
And now they're rivaled by the PCs you can have on your desktop, at least in computer power. And Columbia had financial troubles, and they made the unfortunate decision that instead of upgrading their System 360s to System 370s, which had already been on the market for about 5 years, they would take the less expensive approach of
Rabbi
buying
Bernstein,
deck
please
machines.
contact the hotel operator. Rabbi Bernstein, please contact the
This was
hotel
a decision
operator.
which was supported by exactly 2 people in the computer center, the director and my boss. And the staff of the computer center was almost unanimously opposed to this decision, and as a result, within a 1-year period, 90% of the system staff, which was my department, quit. I held out for about a year. I was one of the last ones to leave. But there was no sign that there was going to be any improvement. And we were all predicting that bad things would happen, and they'd eventually have to wind up getting new IBM equipment anyway, because there was so much of a dependent workload on it. And they'd wind up spending twice as much for support and documentation and consulting and everything. But they wouldn't hear of it, so they lost 90% of their staff. And a few years later, when the 360s broke down completely and they had to get the work done, yes, they did buy 370s, but it was too late by then. anyway, because of that, I went to work for United States Trust Company of New York, which had some nice 370s, 158s and 168s. Later they got 3032s and 3033s. So after having worked for 7 years
Rabbi
for Columbia,
Brownstein, please contact the hotel operator. Rabbi Brownstein, please contact the hotel operator.
They're downtown, like the Broadway, Lower Broadway.
okay, well that's a minor interesting story too. The office, their main office was on Wall Street. The office where I worked was on Water Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to within 3 blocks of where they were located just because I hate to commute. I like falling out of bed and going to work. So after working for them for a few years, they moved. They moved up to 770 Broadway, is that right?
That's 10th Street.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
And the funny thing is, I had previously been living within walking distance of that new location. And that was one of the primary reasons that I decided to leave that company after 5 years. But the immediate impetus for that was that, like everybody else in the business, I was getting calls from headhunters all the time. And I would give them my stock answer, which was, I'm not job hunting, I have no intention of leaving my present position. And anyway, when I do want to switch in the long run, I'd like to come down to Florida. And that would always turn off the headhunters because they were always local New York companies. But one time I got a call from a headhunter and gave him the standard answer. And the response was, well, we don't handle anything in Florida, but we have an affiliated agency that does. So then I got a call from their affiliated agency, which said there was nothing doing in Florida at the moment, but they put me on their mailing list. And a few months later, they called to say that there was a new company being formed in Florida to do videotech services. It would be the first commercial videotech system in the United States. And eventually they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. So in 1982, I came down to Miami Beach to work for this new company called View Data Corporation of America, a subsidiary of Knight Ridder Newspapers. And I worked on this really great project. We produced a videotech system called Viewtron. It was a lot of fun to work with. The only negative thing I had to say about it was that it was not based on IBM mainframes, so I had to learn all about tandems, which are not the greatest systems in the world. And it was really a fun job. I enjoyed it very much. I certainly am glad I moved down for the weather being the primary reason. But then in 1986, Knight Ridder decided that they'd rather use their corporate funds to field other purposes, such as purchasing radio and TV stations. And they shut down the company that I worked for, the subsidiary. And in one day, 139 people were out of work.
Viewtron is very similar to in concept to Prodigy.
That's right. If you use Prodigy, 90% of what you see is the same as what you would have seen on Viewtron.
Did they buy the rights to it, or they just develop it?
It was developed independently.
Yeah.
It was originally a consortium of IBM, Sears, and CBS.
Right.
Now CBS has dropped out of it, and they changed the name to Prodigy. It used to be called Trintex. What they did that U-Data Corporation did not, and probably accounts for their significant success, they now have more than 1 million subscribers, is that instead of using the existing communications networks, such as Telenet, they built their own communications network from scratch, and therefore they put a lot more money into the project up front. When U-Data was selling the Viewtron service to customers that were not located in the South Florida area, they had to charge enough to cover the expenses of the communications network, which had to be paid by the company. So we were charging customers something like $5 an hour, which $4.50 we turned over to the communications companies, and we were making 50 cents an hour. The Prodigy implementation was to have their own network that they've paid for up front, so they're able to charge their customers a flat rate. If you subscribe a year at a time, it's like $9.95 a month, and they have no incremental.
$9.95 a month.
Yeah, that's what I pay as a Prodigy subscriber. It's $12.95 a month if you're on a month-to-month basis.
Mr. and Mrs. David Michaelwitz, please contact the hotel operator. Mr. and Mrs. David Michaelwitz, please contact the hotel operator.
So people can use the Prodigy service as much as they like without having to watch the clock, whereas the Viewtron customers knew that every minute they were on, they were getting billed for it. So that was a strong impetus to minimize use of the system. So we could say that the View Data approach was short-sighted in the long run. They put in $50 million into the project, but Prodigy has probably put in 20 times that. Prodigy isn't profitable yet either, but at least they don't have this constant drain out of their pocket. So it looks like Prodigy will be a long-term success.
And after that?
Well, when
And the next song you wrote?
Right. When View Data went out of business, I looked around for an alternative job in the area, and the Florida market is very weak in computer-related jobs of the sort I was interested in. I talked to a lot of placement firms, and they all gave me the same story. We can get you a job this afternoon, but it's in New York or Chicago. Where would you like to go? I said, forget it. So I decided to go on my own, and I bought my own computer. Now it's 2 computers. I had a client who I met through the fact of his being the owner of a kosher restaurant that I visited often. But aside from that, he's also a lawyer, and he had an idea for a project which would enable him to use some data which he had collected through his law firm to be remarketed to customers who might be willing to pay for the data if it were suitably cross-referenced and manipulated through computer programs. He had no prior computer background, so he asked me to look into it. And eventually I wound up writing a complete system for him, a database-oriented system using RBase. And I outfitted his office with his first computer ever, and everything was working, and we got to the point of marketing the product, and at that point he didn't feel like doing it anymore. He's not a marketing type, and I'm not a marketing type, and the project just languished at that point. So since then I've been doing some miscellaneous freelance programming for him and a couple of other people. But as I've mentioned to you before, the bulk of my daytime hours, at least, are spent in the securities market, playing around with stock options. I've written a whole bunch of programs that I run on my computer where I take the real-time stock option data that I get from Signal and manipulate it through these programs to point out options which are overvalued or undervalued, and I just trade them like crazy. Got something like 750 transactions so far this year.
Oh, wow.
How'd you like to examine that tax?
Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
taxes are no fun.
Yeah, you got to have a buy price and a sell price and a delta for every one of those
And
things.
each one of those has to be classified long-term or short-term, even though the tax treatment is identical. But the government still requires that you maintain separate categorizations.
Jesus Christ.
At least with options, you know, they're always short-term
Yeah.
because all options expire within a 9-month period, and you need a year to be long-term. So I wrote my own RBase program to help automate some of the work of keeping the tax records. Produces a supplemental Schedule D automatically, but it's still a tremendous amount of data that has to be entered by hand. One of these days, some broker will get the idea of distributing your monthly statements in the form of a diskette. Just stick it in your computer and do whatever you want with it, but I don't know of any broker that does that now.
No.
There's a business
Why
idea
not?
for you.
Why don't you work on it?
Well, it's up to the broker. I mean, it's conceptually an obvious idea.
Why
A
don't you
broker
speak
has
to a
walk.
couple of brokers?
There's probably a lot of legal ramifications.
Wouldn't think so. I mean, as long as there's paper backup.
Listen, I can
standardized
get you up
accounting
to a
procedures.
broker. Would you want to try something like that?
It's something that you just have to get involved with the broker's routine scheme of business. I'm sure it's
I
not a
don't
new
know.
idea.
Well, you can talk it over with this guy. He's like vice president of Dean Witter.
Well,
He's a
I'll
fellow
give you a
exactly
definite
your
maybe
age,
on that.
too. But he got very lucky.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Neil Schwartz. I was born in Brooklyn, January 21st, 1942. My parents were Louis Schwartz, who died on December 17th, 1958, and my mother, who is still alive, Rose Schwartz, who has since remarried, and she is now Rose Shine, married to Dave Shine. I have one sister, Diane, who is 4 years younger than I am, and she is currently married, and I am married. Both of us have 2 children. Diane has 2 sons. I have 2 daughters. I'm married to Gloria Schwartz. We got married in 1965. While I was growing up, instead of going to my local high school, while I was in junior high school, I took a test, and because I passed it, my parents thought it'd be a good idea that I went to a special high school called Brooklyn Tech High School, which was basically a school for engineering, but also had a college preparatory course. I took that college preparatory course, did not become an engineer, and actually, when I went to Brooklyn College, where I went for my undergraduate studies, took courses in accounting, then went on to get a master's degree at City College in taxation, and became a CPA, practicing accounting for a few years. Then later went into private business where I worked for large corporations such as ITT, and a few years later moved to Baltimore with my family. Karen had just been born, and I was the chief financial officer of a large company for 5 years there in Baltimore. 14 years ago approximately, we moved our family down to Florida, where I started my own business, and the kids really grew up more in Florida and really think of themselves more as Floridians than they do New York, even though both of them were born in New York. 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, we moved from Plantation, Florida to Boca Raton, and I still maintain my business in Plantation, Florida. I do financial planning for a living. I do investments, insurance, and pension planning as part of my business. My wife, Gloria, works with me now a couple of days a week, and the other day she's up in Boca, where we now live, and is very active in learning to play golf and a lot of other social activities. Most of our social life revolves around the club that we belong to and that we live in, and we play golf on the weekends, and Gloria tries to play some golf as well during the week. We have a very active social life now that we've moved, and we like to think of where we live as Camp Polo for adults. That's basically what we call it, and so do most of the people that live there, and it's really nice to even think of it in those terms because it really is a lot of fun. Today happens to be the Christmas Day. Tomorrow is the 26th of December, and tomorrow there's going to be an election at our club, at which time I'm running for one of the positions on the Board of Governors, which is a group of individuals that help to run our country club. So I'm looking forward to that tomorrow, with a little bit of apprehension, but a lot of excitement, and hopefully I'll get elected and be involved with the running of our club.
Okay.
Thinking back to when I was growing up in Brooklyn, brings to mind, like at dinner tonight, we were talking about baseball, talking about the Yankees, Brooklyn Dodgers in particular. But considering that I was born in Brooklyn and was living very close to Ebbets Field, which used to be where the Dodgers played many years ago, I was never a Dodger fan, I was always a Yankee fan. And that wasn't easy because most people in Brooklyn were very avid Dodger fans. But in any case, I used to root against the Dodgers and root for the Yankees, and that was a real fun rivalry. And over the years, for any of you that remember any history in baseball, it used to be the Dodgers and the Yankees in most of the World Series games during the 1950s. And except for 1 year, we do make some mistakes, us Yankees. The Yankees used to win most of those World Series games. I used to go to Ebbets Field, and it wasn't easy to root against the Dodgers and root for the Cardinals or any other team, but I think it was the challenge of surviving a Dodger game when I went there to root against them. But it was a lot of fun. I always loved baseball, always loved all the statistics of everything that was going on. I used to be a very avid collector of baseball cards like the kids are today. Unfortunately, while I consider myself to be a smart individual, I wasn't smart enough to save those baseball cards after I got married, or instead of sitting here, I might be out on a very large boat retired from all the cards that I probably had in those days. My wife could probably say the same for all of her 45 record albums that we also got rid of when we got married and we moved. It's interesting how what we call junk after we got married have now become collector items and are worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
In fact, thinking about that, I'm moving my office in 2 weeks, and I have collected over the years a lot of different professional magazines, and I haven't thrown them out. In fact, I just boxed them up, and she said, Lori said, "Why am I keeping them?" I said, "Oh, maybe they'll be worth something someday." I made the mistake once. I don't want. Since we have room in the new office, we just packed up about 5 or 6 storage cartons full of various professional magazines, such as Money Magazine and Financial Planning magazines. I have the room. I'll probably keep them there for a few years, one day look at it and say, this is really ridiculous. And of course, 10 years later, when the magazine ceases publication, they'll soon become a collector's item. And I said, oh my God, I did it again. But I think we all go through those stages. I had some, because my dad died when I was a senior in high school, it was unlikely that I was going to do anything but go to a local college. I doubt if I would have gotten a scholarship to go anywhere else, but in any case, fortunately in those days, in the 1950s and 60s, we had free tuition. And it was that free tuition that enabled me and thousands and probably millions of others to get a college education that otherwise I would not have been able to afford, or would not have been able to get. So I went to Brooklyn College and probably spent more time majoring in student activities than I did in my major course of study. Fortunately, I was able to get into graduate school and do well, and then lead into a successful business career. But while I was at Brooklyn, I had a very, we'll just call it a fun time, and got involved in all the activities there. But while I didn't do well grade-wise, it probably was an excellent maturing experience of getting involved in activities. And I've always recommended that my kids get involved. And until Lisa finally went to college, really didn't make much of a dent with either one of the 2 kids, because I told both of them, the experience you get getting involved in student activities is very good for helping you to grow up, learn to accept responsibilities in an organization, and to get work done. And if you take on the responsibility, you need to get that job done, not only for yourself, but for everybody else. You have to learn to give as well as to take in life, and working in an organization is a wonderful opportunity to mature. Lisa is now starting to understand that. She's been involved in school politics for the last 2.5 years. And if you ask her what are the experiences that she looks back on now that she's graduated last week from college, she'll probably list number 1 is her involvement in student activities, and her schoolwork number 2. Now, whether that's the right priority isn't really the point. The point is she's learned to be able to give as well as to take by getting involved in student organizations. And it's been a fun experience. So I'm really very proud of her, for getting involved. And I'm also very proud of her for graduating last week. She's 24 years old. She's gone through a long ordeal in her life, and there's not enough time on this tape to go through the long ordeal that my daughter has gone through. But, that's a real mazel tov for us, and both Gloria and I are extremely proud that she's been able to graduate. Karen, who just turned 20 this November, is now a junior in Emory, which is in Atlanta, and she's doing extremely well. He has a child that when she was in preschool, I guess, or kindergarten, as we were leaving Maryland, they told us, well, we hate to say this to you, Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz, but Karen is very, very, very slow, and you might consider when you go to Florida, when you move, to hold her back so that she gains a little bit of maturity and catches up with the kids. Well, when we got to Florida, we decided that we might consider it, and we spoke to a lot of people, but we also found that the schools in Florida at that time were really not as progressive, particularly as in New York, so we decided to let her continue with her group. Well, I'm happy to report that Karen has been practically a straight A student through high school, and except for one course so far in Emory, in 2.5 years, she's getting straight A. So the girl has done unbelievable in a very tough environment, and we're very proud of her. We're really two very proud parents of our children. I think it's wonderful that the kids have been doing so well. Back to, got off tangent, I was talking about Brooklyn College a few minutes ago. I too got heavily involved in the student activities there, and I found that to be a lot of fun with the house plans and with the student council and with the various clubs. I learned a lot in college. I guess if we all look back, we probably realized when our parents told us, we should work harder because you only get one chance at college, and it happens to be very, very true. Unfortunately, like most, I didn't listen. I did what I wanted, the same way my kids are doing right now. Because you don't understand when you're growing up that parents really do know most of the time what's best for us. When we become parents, we finally learn it when we have to tell it to our own kids. And then when we tell our kids that we were the same as them, they look at you like the same way we looked at our parents. So we all try. But somehow the results are the same, and somehow we survive. Our kids are going to survive too, despite the fact they're going to listen to what they want. They're going to do what they want to do, not necessarily listen to what we want them to do. But things have been well. We've had a nice life. We still do. We still intend to, as far as that's concerned. And there's still a lot more of excitement ahead for us and for the family.
Without getting into a great deal of difficulty, great deal of detail, I mean the word difficulty, you've been very successful in business. What do you credit that to? Is there any single thing, or is it?
Well, I have a strong belief that you get involved with service first and sales second, in my business or any business. If you take the interests of your clients at heart and look out for their best interests along the way, you're going to be taken care of. And the thing that has helped me in my business, particularly since it was the first time I was ever in business, starting on my own 14 years ago, is that I always strive to give a lot of service and take care of people's needs, and was always there when anybody would call. And many times it wasn't involved in making $1, but I knew that if I kept a long-term clientele, that ultimately financially would take care of me. And most of my clients, fortunately, have been with me for very many years. And the easiest way to get and keep business is to have clients for a long term. They stay with you. They have to, they need products, they need investments, they need insurance, they need planning, they need estate planning, and they also tell their friends about you. And the best way to get a client is through recommendations. And that's really what has happened. And it really gets down to caring and taking care of existing clients, and providing a lot of service, even if you don't get compensated at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always believed in that, and it's worked.
Okay. Any further words that we didn't get into?
I'm sure there are, but right now I think I'm a little talked down.
Good.
Okay.
Oh, we were born in New York. Mom and Dad. I don't know. What do we say?
You were born?
Well, she wasn't hatched, you know that.
They tell me so.
Yes.
I found you under a rock and I wanted a playmate. So we brought you home.
Tell them how you
We
went to
the
nursery
chalk
school and
person.
tell them how you told them that Mommy already had her baby and it was a little girl, and
Then you weren't born yet.
and they called up to congratulate. And they called up to congratulate Mommy. She's like, oh, thank you, but haven't had her yet. So Lisa predicted that I'd be a girl.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
No
You
dirt.
You wanted a playmate, so it would be more
Yes.
convenient to have a girl, right?
Mm-hmm. And Mom thought you had a secret playmate. I could go on and on about your
Good.
stories.
I don't have anything to say. I'm very boring.
Lisa.
What? Karen.
Oh, I don't know. What?
Lisa, let's start a little bit about you.
My name is Lisa Eileen.
I
And
was
you.
born.
Okay. You were born in New York, and you lived in New York a couple of years, and then you moved to Baltimore.
Lived there for a couple of years.
What do you remember about Baltimore, other than getting a funky
There were big
accent?
hills.
There were big hills.
Oh, I don't remember much.
No?
Mm-mm. We had 2 swing sets, and I had the better one.
That's important.
Mine was a jungle gym.
We used to
Hers
walk
only
to
had
school
swing.
together. We used to always
We
walk
walked
to
to
school on
school.
the path.
On the
I
path.
remember that. I was little.
And there was
then.
lots of snow.
Daddy used to
Yeah.
rake the leaves. I remember that.
No, my
Yeah.
dad never raked leaves.
Yes, he did. I remember he had a pile of leaves and we messed them up. He was putting them in garbage bags. I remember. We messed them up.
I did have the better swing set.
We had a lot of windows on our house. I know that.
We had 6 windows up top and 4 in the bottom. That's all I remember. That was
In
our
the front.
That was in Columbia.
Well, I don't remember anything before that. It was too
I
young.
cut all your hair off when you were when we lived in the
Well, I
apartment.
finally got hair. She cut it off. And then the babysitter was over.
Mommy was bowling and the babysitter was over and I was bored and I wanted to play with my playmate. So I cut all her hair off.
Yeah. It was just the start of our warm sisterhood.
Yes. This is very nice. Very nice. Then you moved down to Florida.
And then we moved to Florida when I was 5.5 and you
I
were
was-
9.5.
Right.
Yep. And
And I saw King Kong 20 times at summer at the Waterhill movie theater. The Inverary movie theater.
This is very important. So you can, is there any psychological reason why you saw King Kong 20 times?
So no. When we're done
And then-
reflecting
and then-
back, we'll figure it out.
And
Oh,
then we
he
moved
looked-
houses
he
like
looked-
3 or 4 times in about the same 2-mile range. We moved
Yeah, we moved around the corner.
1,
Twice.
2, 3 times.
That's what happens when your mom's a realtor.
She she sold them so well.
She
She sold
bought-
herself.
All right.
And let's see. Then we.
Then we went to college. You moved
Anything
to-
special about high school that you remember?
Lisa drove from the day she was 12 years old.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Turn the camera off.
Anyway, no, Lisa drove at the good old age of 15.
Yeah. That was interesting.
See, we used to
Karen had
we used to
said-
kill each other, but now we're best buddies.
Yeah, right. When Karen drove, she had to say stop before she got to the stop sign, so my dad knew she was aware that there was a stop sign there.
I went through a few, you know.
Oh, okay.
I used to take them for granted. And then, let's say, you went to USF, I went to Emory. I go to Emory.
I went to USF.
You went to USF.
I was very proud of you when you called me the first day of school and told me that you crossed the street by yourself.
I don't remember that.
But did she walk over any chalk dead bodies?
Not yet, I wasn't aware of that. They wanted me to stay at Emory. They wanted to scare me off too soon.
How did you choose Emory?
Because I wanted to get out of Florida, away from the same old thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to stay close enough. Anyway, so I don't know, I thought Atlanta was good. I applied early decision, it was easy.
My mom told her to go.
It was one application.
Yeah.
And then that was it, I was done. No, I like it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who had gone there, so
My
it was
mom
a
told
good
you to
school.
go.
What are you
My mom
majoring
said it
in?
was good.
What?
Psychology.
Psychology.
Don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
Practice
Lisa.
together.
And Lisa. You just graduated.
Just graduated a week ago today.
Yay!
Yay! From college. Whoever thought I'd
Yeah.
make it.
and she held the banner.
I carried the banner for our college.
Oh. This is impressive.
Impressive.
Yes. And you're gonna go
I'm
to
going to Tulane. I'm going to Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Louisiana. I'll practice. I'll get it right. We're so short.
Social work. I must
Because I'm a
have.
kind, caring person, and I'm going to save the world when I'm done.
Okay. Is there a particular? Is there?
Are you drunk or are you doing an interview?
Ah, I'm being sarcastic.
It's
Uh-huh.
the starches.
I'm supposed to
from
be
dinner.
myself.
Right.
It's the
I'm supposed
starch
to be
from
myself.
dinner.
I'm being sarcastic.
Why did you choose Tulane?
Because I didn't have to take the GRE.
We have good reasons for everything. We're just honest.
No, it's because
Perfectly
it's for
good
the
reason.
top 10 schools in social work.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's all like a good place to go for a year. Go to Mardi Gras.
Okay. What do you see yourselves doing in about 5 years from now?
Well, since every day I change my mind, maybe law school, maybe business school, maybe grad school. I really couldn't tell you.
5 years from now, I hopefully will still be a student.
5 years
But I
from
doubt
now,
it.
I'll be 25. I think by 25 I want to be settled down.
In 5 years, I like to be married.
Me too. So we can make little grandchildren.
Yeah.
No, not yet. Not in 5 years. Maybe 10.
So we can have babies.
So we can throw big weddings.
And I could take your kids and
We can
buy
have,
them
we can
everything.
have a joint marriage.
Excuse me?
The four of us. You
Four
and
of us
yours,
who?
You and the groom. Me and my groom.
Your spouse.
My spouse.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Any other words of wisdom that you have?
We're not full of much wisdom.
No? All right, thank you.
We're eating everything.
That's what you've been on film all this time. That's on tape too, Lee. Remember that. For generations to come.
Hi, Ray. Hi, what are we gonna do with you? I don't know what we're gonna do with you.
What is this?
Well, you had the flu shot, you know, we can't isolate ourselves.
$25.
I don't need to go
sit have dinner across from somebody who's sick if I'm going away.
You don't need somebody coughing in your face.
To the pool. My mom's taking.
What size shoe do you wear, Philip?
5.5 going on 6.
I didn't lose mine.
Yeah, do you want to drive, Mom? See?
Does he have his babysitter?
You're gonna walk.
Okay.
All right, ready for me?
Got towels?
You already got the bag?
Not
You
there,
went
I
over it?
have a
Towel.
Mom, do you have the...
The thing is huge.
Well, that was the first one that came out.
I never use it anymore.
I love this.
We don't want to see Game Boy, we want to see you.
I don't want to see you. Can I play mostly?
All right. What I want was just generally a history of when you met my parents, and you know later on as the families grew up and developed. Florence.
Your folks moved in, I think, in June, after you got out of school, because they wouldn't put you out of school.
Right.
And we moved in April, they came in June.
Of 51.
52.
52. Okay.
That's when we first met you.
Okay.
And you used to babysit for my kids.
Yes. Yes.
Right, and then I wouldn't have that second car if it wasn't for your father.
Oh, that's
He
it.
insisted
He
that.
insisted.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, what did Nat do before? Yeah.
Before he,
Originally, you worked for Reeves, right?
yeah, we moved to the island because he was working at Roosevelt Field at a company called Reeves.
Right.
And we put a compass and we wound up with the place where we were. Your folks had more brains, they had had a house before, and they were looking for better things and different things. We were lucky, we lucked out.
We struck an arc about 15 minutes away from
Roosevelt.
Reeves, which ended up being it was either Wantor or East Meadow. And we were going east rather than west because the prices were better at that time going east.
At that time, it still is better when you out further, the charge left.
What did you like about Forest City?
I looked for two things, and it sounds very foolish now because almost everybody has what I was looking for. At that time, they didn't. I wanted 2 bathrooms, which was a luxury, and I wanted a center hallway, which was a must for me, and most people used to walk into what they would call a center hallway and walk into a living room or through a living room or to a kitchen and through a kitchen. I wanted all the rooms off a center hallway, and those were the 2 things I got. I didn't get the garage, I had to build the garage out back. But that was
And the community, at that time we had a farm.
for the children.
And
A clubhouse,
clubhouse, it had a,
a lake for rowing.
it had a summer camp for the youngsters at the time.
And your folks moved in June.
Right.
And your mother and I started to play mahjong together with some of the other women on the block. And due to the type of occupation your father was in, he was home in the afternoon. And it bothered him once I had children and I didn't have a car. And all
He
the
used
other
to,
women.
whatever she needed.
Your father, whatever I needed, he
ran.
ran forward. My kids were sick, he was at the drugstore picking up the medicine. He was always Johnny on the spot.
I'll never forget, we had, what was it, green stamps?
S&H green stamps.
S&H green stamps. And we had books laying around the house. He says, what are you gonna do with these? He says, well, we don't have time to get anything. What do you want? He brought a catalog. And next thing you knew, he took the books.
He picked up
An hour later, he was back with whatever we wanted.
Your mother was kosher and I wasn't. While we ate out together, fine. She used to send your father over when I made ham because she wouldn't have it in the house. And you had a dog, Blackie, that would not eat the ham. The Blackie would eat everything else I made, but if I made ham, Blackie would sniff and walk away.
Was the dog Blackie?
Patches.
Patches. Blackie was yours. That
I was wondering.
Your Blackie was also, wouldn't eat the ham. Another one.
Yep.
Two of them.
That dog was kosher.
Two.
But Patches would come. He would first see what was in your house.
Yeah.
And if he didn't like it, he came to our house. Scratching
on
on
the door. And if I gave him what he liked, then he wouldn't go back and eat. And at the beginning, your folks used to be concerned he's not eating until they discovered that he would come
He'd be at our house.
Eating. And you used to babysit for my children. And well, part of the family. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when your father passed away, you were upset to the degree that you walked away from school. And Nat did it deliberately. He said, you're coming to work for me. The reason for that is he knew that it was donkey work. He knew that it was hard labor. And he said, you're not going to get any leeway. And it took 6 months out of it. Did you go back to school?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
back to school.
Most definitely. Got back on track.
And I don't have boys. All I had was girls. And Nat had been in engineering, and he had certain equipment for engineering, and you had gone into that field initially. And he walked over to your parents and asked if they would be offended if he gave you his slide rule and certain other things, so that when you graduated high school, you got what, if we had had a boy, to whom we would have been
Still have the slide rule.
Yeah. Nice to know.
Absolutely.
All right.
Even the drafting set, but the drafting set I don't use. The slide rule is neat. I gotta show my kids that. They don't appreciate
They don't
that.
know. They don't know from slide rules.
They don't know what a slide rule is. Calculators.
I had a slide rule which I gave to Stephanie. Mine was an inexpensive one, which one of the teachers insisted that we learn to use because I was in some sort of an advanced class, and it was only used for a couple of months. But Stephanie used to walk around and use that slide rule. I don't know whatever happened to that, but the good one you got.
No, I still have it.
Yeah,
I still have it.
The government paid for it, under the VA. And I remember your folks very, very fondly.
Yeah.
I used to take your mother when your father was in the hospital, that she wasn't able to drive. So poor Barbara was put into nursery school, and your mother had to wait for the bus to pick her up. And then we would both go out to
Patchogue,
to the hospital. And as I said, your father did, Nat wasn't around, your father did anything and everything I ever needed, at all times. I used to tell him he has 2 wives. He's very good-natured.
He made me buy a second car. He said, you can't leave her out here in the boondocks without a car. And I bought a second car.
That was the first used car that he ever bought. So once he bought a used car, and he didn't like the used car. So the minute he could afford it, that was it. Got rid of the used car and bought a.
I remember making a trip with you, Nat, up to the mountains in a Falcon.
Yeah,
and you brought up.
station wagon.
Yeah,
Station
and
wagon.
did you bring up a small refrigerator or something with you?
Yeah.
We had a summer place upstate New York, and your folks used to come up to visit us, number one.
And your aunt and uncle in Liberty.
Yeah.
And during the weathers when we weren't using it, and they wanted to go to see your aunt and uncle in Liberty. Of course, it's much nicer when you have your own place to stay at. They used to take the key and go up and use our place, and then drive over to Liberty to stay with your aunt and uncle. And you had a cousin Irving who was a
policeman.
Yeah. Wait a second. A state trooper.
Right.
State trooper.
Yeah.
I remember. What kind of a garden or?
He was at the
Arboretum. Yeah, bed cutting arboretum. Yeah.
Your folks took us down there so that he could take us through. We had a very nice relationship, and they were just wonderful people. I'll always remember them.
Okay. All right.
Eat it, Lee. Go ahead. You're on camera.
That'll show him he's really means business.
Yeah, he's smart. See, he really kept his word. That's very important.
Where's the cap?
Chewing.
Chewing? What are you chewing?
What are you eating? Veal chop, tell him.
None of your business.
That's being fresh. Say veal. I bet you don't even know how to say it. You know how to say veal chop?
I'll explain it. Yeah.
Say veal chop. I want to hear you say it. I can't hear it. I'm
Veal
hard of hearing.
chop.
Veal? How do you like that? The whole mouthful.
He has chicken nuggets, he has fish sticks, he has macaroni and cheese and chicken and pizza. Does that name everything on earth that you wish? Right. Plain bagel, nothing on it. You don't want to know. You wouldn't believe it.
PB&J on matzah.
A matzah is a matzah with peanut butter on it. Matzah, you buy matzah here. I buy matzah year round. Don't make me. What? A picture sitting in elementary school lunchroom, the only person is 6 years in the whole building. Sitting in the lunchroom, eating a piece of matzah with peanut butter. It doesn't bother.
Trying to find out what the bone is.
Yeah, eat around the bone. Pick out the bone. You pick it.
Yeah, she's gonna do the wave.
She's laughing.
Boy,
Say, make some noise, Haley.
Make some noise. She's an expert.
Make some noise.
Nah, it's good being quiet.
She just stuck her tongue out.
Let her smile.
She's not going to.
It looked like she was going to, and then you put your hand over her.
You can make her talk.
Yeah.
Hello, Ira.
Oh, you're. What is that?
Alright, let's see who's first.
That's not our little kid.
Well, it is. Your granddaughter.
It's okay, he wasn't insulting you. What's the matter? Is he trying to figure out 12:30, 1:32?
Cool. Who wants to ask me? Harry asked me.
Howie,
What?
go tell your sister that it's time for her to eat.
Jenny, it's time for
Howie, you have to go in her room.
Jenny.
I'll do it.
That's a good idea.
Yes, it's I'm hungry. I want to eat.
Hey.
I'm hungry. I want to eat. How are you getting a long black hair?
None of us do.
How are you getting a long black
That's an
hair?
answer.
What?
I hate the classics.
Smile pretty for the camera.
I guess the kids and stuff. I'll give
Look over
it back.
there.
She sees it.
You see it?
You know,
See?
no,
Look.
right.
Not over there. Over there. Look.
Uh,
She
you don't want it.
Go again if you get one right.
Okay.
What sitcom
Randy's
premiered three waitresses on Mel's Diner?
You gotta take film of this because this is hysterical.
Yeah, if it comes out, right?
Alice.
It's not only half it comes out, she
Yeah,
makes
right.
terrible faces.
I forgot the name.
She
Go
says,
for it, Lee.
take me. 3, 6.
Have fun, Lee. Go ball again.
Yeah, roll again. Come on,
Hey.
Brown.
Where's the liquid?
We'll go for blue, Lee.
Blue, I guess.
He's gagging.
What's
The thing is to start this.
This is a funny question. Alright, this is a question for everyone.
Open.
Who's the first Today Show host to perform
Okay,
a
here's
mystical
bottle.
skit with this fly open?
I don't
Do you
know.
want a bottle?
Does anyone know that?
There we go.
Did anyone listen to it?
Fly open? Dave
You spitting on
Garrow.
Grandma? Open.
Where did these names come from?
You can put too much in the spoon.
Where are you? This
We're
one?
gonna go for the brown.
She can't spit as much out.
What,
The tongue out and
Oh.
Animation character?
Oh.
That's not so bad.
Mighty Mouse.
The things we do to you, we make you eat.
Oh, anyway, we're going on.
you know, one of the reasons it has no sugar at all, so it's only. Then maybe she needs a drink. Yeah.
Again, fourth time.
Can I have the
You
bottle?
know this? Who doesn't know this?
It's a bottle, it's not
Who
a
said
spoon.
I don't know. Who said what? Well, smart. Maxwell Smart. I watched that.
I do.
Hey, what are you
Snuck that one
doing?
in.
Oh, sorry. Good. Roll again.
Doesn't matter. Each way.
You could have gone
It's working, whatever.
Oh, I would.
Watch your mouth.
Just last night.
It wasn't as hard.
Oh, again.
Get a poopy.
Go for brown. Who cares? It's not for the piece, though.
Who are dubbed Asphalt Us and
There you go.
Canada's Nervous Rex in the cartoon War and Pieces?
You get that outfit dirty, I'll break your
I
nose.
don't know.
I'll break your nose.
You're over my dead body, Mom.
No. The Roadrunner and Wild E. Coyote. TV trivia.
Wait.
That's
Can
the
I
thing
see
I know
the
that
question
Taylor-
first?
Yes.
Now, Jessica does not weigh 12
Look on this.
Orange piece?
Thanks, Lee.
What CBS News show is the most profitable show in TV history, netting over $1 billion by 1990?
60 Minutes.
I didn't have a blanket on there, but that make it.
That's old CBS's only good
The
show.
blanket on it.
Alright. Halfway there.
Ew.
Three. Brown or pink?
How many words each do the Darryls finally speak in the final episode of Newhart? I know that.
3.
1. Shut up! That was all
One
they
word.
said.
Ooh.
I don't think she's gonna eat much.
2.
Yeah.
You?
One more.
5.
Go for the puzzle piece.
Puzzle piece.
We'll see.
Who?
Where do I start? I don't know.
You are?
I'm Fran Brickman. This is my husband, Joe.
Yes.
And we have 2 children. We live in Largo, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 children, Jenny, who's 18, and Howie, who's 14.
Mm-hmm.
And we met Diane and Ira. Are we supposed to talk in first person?
In the line for food stamps.
We did.
No, not really.
I met Diane through ORT.
Ort.
Women's American ORT.
Is
The
that something you have
Levittown
on
chapter.
your...
Yes, you have it
On your
removed.
arm. Howie has a blood mark from Ort.
And we belong to the same chapter.
How long ago was that?
Long time.
About 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it was before
When?
she was pregnant with
When
Jeff.
Jenny was about 3? 2, 3, somewhere in
I
there.
guess.
Yeah.
Actually met you through people that you no longer speak to. Margie and Harvey.
Oh, yeah, I mean, not close friends with, right? Good.
And in 1980,
We
we
moved to
left Long Island and moved down here.
Mm-hmm.
where we live ever since.
Now I'm a mailman. I've been mailmanning for 20 years and 10 years before that.
Why did you decide to move down here?
Because I didn't know if I could take the cold anymore.
Okay. Okay.
So I figured.
And also at the time you had some close relatives down here.
But not near
That
here.
wasn't really because I could have come much sooner.
No.
I really thought of what it would be like in my 50s, hitting the cold weather.
You used to daydream in the summer what the winter would be like.
That was like an obsession, you know. So I gotta try. I gotta try. Sometimes I wish I didn't get it, but then I would have thought all along, would I have liked it?
Yeah.
I know I wish I didn't get it.
I know, I do too. I really do. But, you know, like I made the commitment, they don't give you a chance to try it out.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck. You know? And
because you don't make friends here like you do up north.
you know, people here are something else. Like I said in the living room, I miss you guys.
Thank you.
You know, and I'm glad that you come
and visit occasionally.
and what?
We have World War III. Is there such a...
Okay. Down here you've had some nice things happen, like bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah.
Yeah, Jenny had a bat mitzvah, Howie had his bar mitzvah, I had my bat mitzvah.
Ah.
Which was super special.
Yes, and you were 13 plus.
Many pluses.
And I've been more involved in the temple than I was ever involved with church.
Mm-hmm.
With a church.
Why is
That's
that?
a plus here.
Yeah, why is that so? Seriously.
Because I like it there.
The rabbi makes you feel like you belong.
And I enjoy working with the people who I work with to be involved.
The working people, not the...
They're not the rich ones, and
Right.
there are a lot of rich ones.
Rich Jews down here are snobs.
And some of the poor Jews down here are snobs. They act like they've got it, and they don't.
We also recently heard of one of your nice exploits to do with the Jewish Center on the theater.
Oh, yeah, well.
He's a thespian.
Excuse me? Do you get arrested for that?
Thespian.
I'll give you lisping lessons later.
I don't have a speech impediment. Yeah.
Okay. We're talking back to about your acting career, your career in
You
acting.
gotta be sick to want to work on a stage.
Why is that?
You're a nervous wreck before you go on,
Yeah.
unless you are a psycho or some kind of neurotic or something whacked out that you're not nervous, and you blow lines, and you're sweating, your hands are sweating, you've got sweat running down your back, and your whole insides are twisting, and when it's over, you feel let down. How sick? It's sick. But I did like it.
When do you want to do it again?
When they do something else. He's got 2 possible plots for me already.
All right.
Arsenic and Old Lace.
We just saw that. It's very good.
You know the guy who plays the big, tall, Frankenstein-looking guy?
Yes.
Saul says, how often do you have a member of the temple that is a Frankenstein lookalike?
and that can do an elephant.
Right? And also, if he did Odd Couple, I'd be Murray the Cop. So I mean, like,
Win the Oscar?
No. Saul and Mark would do the main parts.
Okay.
But like I did enjoy it.
Okay. And you also took part in that theatrical experience.
I was the stage manager.
Oh.
I was the one that rang...
Were you the mommy of the group? No. But you did everything else, putting it together.
Right, I was the publicist, I was the furniture getter, and things like that.
Okay. Also, in the last year, you've had a recent addition to your family.
Yes, we have Haley, our almost 3-month-old granddaughter.
Ah, she was born what date?
October 18th. 1991.
She was almost born on our anniversary.
Well, she was born a week before Joe's birthday.
And that's a proud new addition. What's her middle name?
Alyssa.
That's a nice
And
name.
her Hebrew name is, not that you're interested, Hannah Eliza, because she's named after my mother.
Oh, that's nice. That's
And
good.
she is a little Jewish Parker. She really is. The kid's growing like a weed.
Is there anything else you want to put on tape? Last words of wisdom for the eons of people to follow?
Yeah. My dream when I have retired from the post office, if I can make it, is to get a mobile home and work for Walt Disney and get tickets for free.
And then go up to North Carolina in the summer when it's hot.
Yeah, really.
And this way we can visit all our friends in New York frequently. And they can come visit us. Because we won't be so far away.
Because it's...
Yeah.
And I can take cigarettes up to the people who smoke.
Are you a cigarette smuggler?
Do you know what? You can get arrested for that?
Yeah, but they don't bother.
It's on tape.
Are you going to give it to them?
No. You don't
I
have to.
have in my possession a tape.
Okay.
I want to hear the band.
Ed. Light.
Years and change. Maybe 22. I'm going to hold on to it as long as I can. And now, December 28, 1991, I don't know how long it's going to be. But you heard it, you saw it. Thank you. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Hold it on.
As we fade into the darkness.
Hey, that handbook. I'll wear that tomorrow. Two golf courses.
Play the stupid games they have in always fun.
Not now. After I go
You
swimming.
can go there when it's dark.
Go when it's dark because
It's right near us. I mean, I don't want to walk 6 miles. Could you just go somewhere else so I can...
Hey, so I have to tell who I am now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've been the same person all your life,
All
right?
my life, all my life. Okay. Lorreta Clemente.
Right.
Okay. Let me see. I was Lorreta Weiss. My mom and dad are Shirley Weiss and Nat Weiss. My father being the brother of Lil Shapiro, Ira's mom. And let me see. I just went blank. Okay, let me see. There was my mom and dad and my brother, who was 3 years older than me. And my brother and I were both born in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And we were brought up there until we hit our teenage years. My mother and father bought a chicken farm in Englishtown, New Jersey, where we lived for, we bought it in 1948 and lived there until 1969. It was a nice farm. It was 10 acres. We had a lot of good family times there, family circles. We had some really great times when everybody from New York came out. And had a great meal, and then always ended up with my dad calling for the big poker game, which the whole family enjoyed very much. And this would happen once a year. In fact, we would take turns going to different relatives' houses for a meeting every time. And we lived on this farm until, of course, my dad passed away. And I got married and had 2 boys, Greg and Darren, and they were brought up in Freehold, New Jersey. And let me see.
Greg and Darren are how old now?
Let me see. Greg is 29 years old and Darren is 25. And they both live up in New Jersey. And I have since remarried. 3 years ago I was remarried to my husband now, Rudy. And we now live in Florida, where we have retired. I met Rudy while working at ShopRite, Foodorama, and we met and we got married. And we retired and bought a great house here in Florida, and we're enjoying it very much, living a retired life.
Could you tell me a little bit about your brother Marty?
Brother Marty,
what, where he went to college and what he did.
My brother Marty, he was in high school, in Jamesburg High School, and he never took school too seriously. And he really didn't know what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a musician. He was a very good musician. He played clarinet, sax, flute. He sang, and thought he wanted to go into music as a profession. And later, he did go to junior college. He still didn't know what he wanted to do, and later went into the Navy when the Korean War broke out. And during that time, he took a correspondence course in psychology and decided that this is what he really wanted to do. And when he got out of the Navy, he went to Michigan State University and got his degree and became a psychologist. And still played music on weekends, had a really great band.
He did band arrangements too, right?
Yes, he did arranging. He took theory, he taught music, he did a lot of things with music. He was really a really good musician. And never married. And that was my brother Marty. Let me see. What else?
Do you have any funny stories about you and Marty?
Not really.
Had a very serious life, right?
Pretty serious. My father was the comedian. My father had a sense of humor that not too many people knew. Well, his family knew it, but he could tell stories in a very innocent way and just have the whole family and everyone just hysterical. He was really a great guy. And that was my dad.
Well, not quite as much as I did with his failure to walk across Lake Michigan and spread the
I was very close with Elaine Shapiro when we were younger. Jack and Lil and Elaine and I used to come out to the farm, and Elaine and I used to always make up to meet in New York, and we used to go to ice shows. That used to be our big thing. We used to go to ice shows. And when I got married, Elaine was my maid of honor, as Lily was, Aunt Lily was, at my mom and dad's wedding. She was their maid of honor. We were pretty close until we both got married, and then I think we kind of like lost each other.
Your mom's still alive with us, thank God.
Yes, Mom is still alive, thank God. She's going to be 81 this January.
Oh, wow.
She's living in Florida in good old Century Village in West Palm Beach. And she's enjoying life. She's very active. And in fact, she's involved in volunteer work where at one point she was parking cars and she was seating people at concerts, walking up and down aisles with a flashlight at 80 years of age. So she's a pretty active lady.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, quite a lady.
Is there anything else you want to put on tape that you can recall?
Not real. I can't think of anything else.
Okay, thanks.
Don't stop in the middle of the most.
Shut up.
Enter the vehicle and remain seated throughout your journey. Please stay clear of the doors. They open and close automatically. Please step carefully onto the platform. Then step carefully.
Have you noticed this weird way people move a car doesn't have an engine? Well, you see, these vehicles travel quietly and with no air pollution on a system of linear induction motors. And an amusement park. There's just such a...
These villages are all your belongings, including your imagination. Our mission to Mars takes place sometime in the future when flight danger...
Those small unmanned rocket ships you see leaving us will shortly be sending back television pictures as they climb near the surface. But it's hard to get the scale of things. The wall there is almost 4 miles high, and the floor is about 50 miles across at this point. Even those branch canyons you see are 6 or 7 miles wide and go back as much as 100 miles from the main rift. This is no little canal by any means. On the upper screen, we're switching to what is literally the high point of Mars, Olympus Mons, the biggest volcano in the whole universe. On Earth, the largest calderas are up to 10 miles across, but that's 40 miles to the opposite rim. Olympus appears to be extinct now, but just imagine what it was like when that entire area was a sea of boiling lava. Scientists estimate it was... Just a moment, please.
Space Economy Show lost the signal on Remote 2. Impact counters rising.
Ladies and gentlemen, our camera ship has been knocked out of control by a shot. Ladies and gentlemen, we're returning to Earth immediately.
He's getting my Canada ready, man. Say, look out there across the water. There's a little bit of company.
No, yes. Welcome, you all.
Permit us to introduce ourselves. My name is Claude, and my loquacious cousin over here is...
I'll introduce myself, if you don't mind. Hi there. I'm, let's see now. It's right on the tip of my beak.
Clyde Birdbrain.
Oh, yeah. I'm Clyde Birdbrain.
Oh, I say, perhaps you good people have never conversed with toucan birds before.
Why, neither did we. Till one day we discovered this magic sunshine pavilion.
By Jove, yes. I remember just how it was.
Everybody, face the door. Und the
Walking with her. A lot of people I know are going that way. They always have to wear the weather. It's very rumble.